This is a trick I learned some years back. I always do my double stitching. All of the towels you'll be drawing from the back side. So to make sure I never pull the wrong string.
From the back side?
Oh, you'll see in just a moment. I always trim the thread that's on the front side about 1/4 inch out so it doesn't pull out, but it's about 1/4 inch away from the edge. I trim that one off, that way I don't accidentally pull on the wrong strings and lock it up. And then I just gently move the thread. All of my towels, I've always done it so that I can draw on the back side.
You lost me on that clipping and drawing and...
I might have lost you. I doubt I've lost Marilyn, because if she's done any sewing, this is a technique we all learn. At least I learned from my mother for pulling the thread. See, I'm holding onto this thread and I'm sliding the fabric along the thread. What I do is I clip the thread that's on the right side, the nice side. I clip that because that way I don't end up pulling all 4 threads. There are 4 threads on each end of the towel.
How did you get 4 threads in there?
Well, when I stitched this here, I did a row here and a row here. There's a top and bottom thread. So then what I do is I always stitch from the back side and have my top tension tight so that the thread is floating to this side. That makes it a lot easier to pull it. But if you accidentally pull like these 2 threads at the same time, it just locks it, and then you can't draw from both sides. You can't gather along the thread from both sides. So this is something, because I was always doing this when I was a kid, I developed this technique to keep from accidentally pulling the wrong thread. And it spared me many a heartache, because if you break the thread, then it's almost easier to just pull everything out and stitch a new set of threads. So basically that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to draw. Usually it requires it to be drawn about as tight as the towel will allow you to make it. And then I just pin. I look for which side, there's always one side that seems to work a little better as far as when I iron it. So I pick the one that looks the nicest and I pin it on. And I don't know where my pins are. In this case, it's not quite an exact match, so I'm going to have to kind of...
Those pins right here.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Usually I can't quite get the towel to gather up as short as the top is.
What do you mean as short as the top is?
Well, if you look here, this is longer than that. See how there's a big gap here? But I find that if I pull my threads after I've pinned it, because the edge that's right near the end of the near the edge doesn't like to stay gathered, so I usually go ahead and put it on to pull my, and I will just hold those threads tight. Oh, well, I didn't do a good job of that. I am out of practice.
Oh, what thread's tight? The one on the terry cloth?
Yes, that on the towel. I'll hold those tight so it stays tight. But I've got to get a needle into this. And this machine always nails the needles. So, shoot. And I also have to hang on to the threads if I want this to... And I don't worry about it being a black thread on the back side. Nobody looks at their towel from the back side. So I don't worry about changing the thread color. Would just make the towels take a lot longer to make. That's, ow, I got a bad fingernail there. It hooked the thread. Okay. And I just, usually I have to tuck that just a little bit to get it to tuck the towel just a tiny bit. I give it a little tuck there because most of the time it doesn't want to. It wants to do like it just did.
What did it just do?
See how that's a little bit longer?
Oh.
It does that. But I have a workaround. So I pull this one thread that's, I go ahead and leave this thread, gathering thread behind. This,
which gathering thread?
the one that's on the top above the stitching, and I pull the bottom one out so that there's no thread showing on this side. And then
Well, where have you pulled one out? What holds it? I mean, I don't understand.
the black stitching here holds the gathers. It holds them in place.
What was it that you just pulled out, though?
I pulled out the gathering thread that I just used to gather it up.
The two long ones, you mean?
I just pulled out one of them. I didn't pull out the top one because I want that one for, and if you don't have a serger.
Why do you have to pull out any of them?
Because the other one would show on the outside.
But the back side.
It would show on the front side.
Oh.
So I have to pull it off. Now I'm going to just switch with this machine. I'm going to just switch to a zigzag here to keep that from fraying out. I've done it before with my serger, but since I doubt Marilyn has a serger, just use a zigzag to hold it. And then, this is my trick. It often does this, so I just roll it underneath.
It does what?
This little white, I often have that happen where I have this white piece. See, there's the thread, the top thread. It was lying right there, so it would have been showing if I hadn't pulled the back thread out.
Just fold it under.
So I just fold it under.
A little extra.
Yep. And then put it back to straight stitch. And top stitch it to secure it. Is the towel at this point. I have to get buttons. I don't have any. So I usually do a buttonhole here and here and just stitch a button onto the piece. Okay. Stitch a button on there to button it on. I don't usually bother with, I have to re-iron this, but I don't usually bother with putting a backing behind the button. It doesn't really matter. And I love to get buttons that you can stitch through, but I don't have that at the moment. So for now, this gets us started.
Okay.
Thank you.